Good morning, my friends. This is Paul, and welcome to another episode of ISTJ Info Dumping, where we're going to talk about how to really make an ISTJ's day, how to make them feel so happy and so pleased that it could even counteract feelings of depression or anguish that they might be having. A lot more ISTJs have that than you think. It's just that they prefer to hide it as opposed to announcing it to the whole world, like, say, the INFPs and the ENFJs do. So, for starters, it really helps if you develop a good memory. I'm mostly speaking from experience here, being an ISTJ myself, but I'd like to think that a lot of this is based on how the average ISTJ thinks. We really value people that put a lot of emphasis on remembering what's important. So, if you're the type that's constantly forgetting things, then that's going to really bother us, because we're going to have these really amazing memories and really cool experiences that we had with you that we might want to reminisce about. And if you're like, sorry, what? When did that happen? Then we're going to be like, wait, what? How could you forget? That's the day of our anniversary. Now, we're not going to throw a hissy fit about it like some of the more sensitive types where they're like, you forgot my anniversary. No. We're not going to be like that. We're just going to say, you scatterbrains, how do you get anything done? So it's going to come as more of like a pity kind of thing, like, oof. Oh, that's just terrible. As opposed to genuinely feeling offended. ISTJs will really appreciate if you back up your compliments with empirical data to prove your point so that they don't think you're just trying to pity them. Like if they're like, oh my gosh, I am just not getting good views on my channel. What the heck is my problem? And you're like, well, I'm sure your channel is great. Don't say you're sure my channel is great unless you're sure my channel is great. You haven't even watched it. Why are you complimenting? That's not going to make an ISTJ feel better. That's going to make them feel worse because you're adding to the problem. Instead, back it up. Look up. Say, well, let me not use the channel example. That might not be the best. Let's say that the ISTJ organized a project to clean up all the weeds around a young adult group. This is a true story, except it wasn't done by an ISTJ. So I'm going to put a spin on it as if I was the one that did the project. So the ISTJ, works so hard. They even work on their days off to pull out the weeds and to get rid of the unsteady ground. And overall, they make the place look gorgeous. And at the end, you say, wow, that's really nice work. They'll be like, whatever, I guess, thanks. If you want the ISTJ to really take to heart what you said, as opposed to just brushing it off like, yeah, whatever, it might help if you do something like a before and after comparison. Like, say if you take a picture of the project before, and then you show them the picture after, and then you take a ruler, and you measure how long the weeds are. And you say, look at how long the weeds were in this picture compared to in this picture. Then the ISTJ will be like, ooh, tangible results. I do see a valid difference. And then you have to say why it was important that they did all that work. You would say, you know what, Paul? Ever since you got rid of those weeds, then the bricks haven't been cracking, and so there have been less drafts coming into the building. Weeds might not be the best example of that. Let's say that you cut their lawn for them. You would say, I had a really bad back, and if it hadn't been for you, then I would have possibly gotten my back worse. So you just saved me a lot of doctor bills. And then you show them a calculation of like how much money you saved them, so then they can say, I saved you some money. How nice. So then the ISTJ can feel like they're effective. If that's one thing ISTJs berate themselves over, it's, was I good enough? Was I the peak citizen? Was I the model of perfection? ISTJs like to think that if people look at them, they see an example of how to live the best life. And if they feel like they failed in that, then they're going to take it really hard. So again, that before and after. Tell them what you were like prior to that. Maybe show a Facebook picture. Let me use the extreme example of, let's say that you were a prostitute before meeting the ISTJ. Then the ISTJ came along and said, maybe you shouldn't be doing that. Maybe you should go more on the road of chastity. And then you tell them what you are like now. then the ISTJ can say, well, I'm glad to help. Then they'll say, I don't want you to just be glad to help. I also want you to realize that this was huge, that you've saved me from this and this and this and this. So therefore the ISTJ can say, this was my contribution. Wow, I helped this person become a better citizen. ISTJs also appreciate it when you take into account their introverted preferences. Now, I know I like to talk about the functions more than I like to talk about the letters, but to a certain extent, being introverts, we do like our one-on-one alone time. I mean, this room, for example. While I wouldn't normally do this, here's just a little itty-bitty taste of what I was like. Oh boy! Oh, this empty space. Whew. Oh, freedom. Something along those lines. Knowing that they have so much room to make mistakes, so much room to introspect, so much room to wonder, did I do the right thing or not? If you take them on that kind of an outing, make it a one-on-one, somewhere quiet and peaceful, possibly aesthetically pleasing, like a lake. Because ISTJs are introverted sensors, they do notice what's around them. They don't really miss anything. And if you go the extra mile to notice something about the ISTJ too, they're going to be pleased by it. Like when people noticed that I got a haircut between October and now, that it wasn't so much that I liked the fact that they liked the haircut, it was more so the fact that they noticed it in the first place, that I actually made a tangible difference to my body. Well, I don't really think the hair is considered your body because it's dead cells, whatever, science aside. The fact that in the past people have just ignored my hair, I mean it was like down to here before, now it's only up to here. It doesn't look like that much of a difference to you. It wasn't so much the fact that I was looking for validation and whether my hair looked good or not. It was more so the fact that people actually had eyeballs. See, I personally find a huge amount of value in a person embracing that they are human and not animals. And part of what's being human is the ability to not act on instinct, but to act on free will. So, for example, if a person is about to cross the road and they actually stop and think, would this be the best time to go through a red light or not? They're showing intellect as opposed to the animal where they're just running. If the human stops and thinks, is this good for me? Should I really be eating this? As opposed to like, food! I admit I fall into both camps at times, but I do appreciate it when people show levels of restraint and free will. It makes me realize, oh, if you can think that deeply about that little thing, then maybe you can think deeply about the more important things in life. And who knows, maybe you could catch an ISTJ in a romantic way that way. If you're in a romantic relationship with an ISTJ and you really want to get his attention, then it would really help if you show interest in what he's interested in. And not just, oh, I'm going to put up with this, but to have actual, tangible interest. I don't know how much more specific I can get. Like if he really likes a certain video game, you play it with him. If you end up not liking it, then at least show some kind of evidence as to why it's not working. Compare it to something that the ISTJ doesn't like. Like if they say, I don't like philosophy, then you'll say, well, the reason I don't like your video game is that it's the same way as you don't like philosophy. See, ISTJs are generally pretty good at taking criticism, provided that you do a good job of presenting it. If you're going to just like insult them for the sake of insulting them, like say the ESTJs do, the ISTJ is going to say, grow up, you're too emotional. But if you say, now hold on a sec, this is a valid point that I have, and if you listen to my valid point, then maybe you could be on the road to self-improvement. The ISTJ might not take it very well at first, but generally speaking, if they hear criticism, they'll think about it for a long time. And after they finish with the initial shock factor of knowing that they did something wrong, then they'll say, you know what? I could do with being a better person. I will take this into consideration. Giving the ISTJ time to think, helping them realize that it's okay to feel. If you give an ISTJ permission to be vulnerable, if you give the ISTJ permission to talk, if you even give them permission to be stupid, ISTJs like it when they're told what to do as opposed to being expected. So if you go into, say, a relationship with an ISTJ with a whole bunch of to-dos and not to-dos, admittedly, they're going to like that a lot. ISTJs like knowing ahead of time what are the rules and how do I follow them. They're very to-the-book people. But then if you go the extra mile and create another rule that gives them freedom, initially they might not know what to do with it. But on the other hand, it might allow them to actually take a break and loosen up and show you a more vulnerable side of them. If you say the only rule I'm giving you is that there are no rules, and you mean it, then the ISTJ is going to really, really appreciate you. They're going to say, so I can go ahead and talk your ear off about my favorite game? Yeah, no problem. I can make an inappropriate sex joke because I'm not aware of what you're feeling? Yeah, go ahead. I'm not saying that's exactly how you should pursue it, but if you're going to encourage an ISTJ to show off parts of themselves, it's got to be within the confines of a rule. So if you don't want the ISTJ to be too darn quiet and reserved and say, here is a rule for you, and you have to follow this rule, then the ISTJ is going to take it a lot more seriously. Now, I'm not sure how exactly you would go about that in a relationship. I would like to think that I'm more easygoing than the average ISTJ. I'd like to think that if I were ever to meet a girl that I dated, that if God says she's cool, then even if she has quirks that are strange, I would put up with them. I'd learn how to compromise. I'd talk it out. I'd wonder, okay, let me see if I can understand what you're talking about. As opposed to just flat out saying, no thanks. Not to say I won't show resistance. I certainly would probably laugh and be like, you want me to date an ENTJ? Are you kidding me? You sending me to the lion's den? But the average ISTJ doesn't think like me. The average ISTJ is going to think like them. But the average ISTJ is also going to want a framework to work with. So they may not necessarily be into Myers-Briggs as much as I am. But if you had something of a similar nature that the ISTJ could latch onto as a way of knowing how to act in every situation, that'll make an ISTJ's day. If, say, they like the temperaments, you could say, okay, here is how phlegmatic I am. Here's how sanguine I am. Here's how melancholy. If you, if you want to compromise on how loud your music should be, just say, I won't go any higher than 20 on the dial. If you set those kind of parameters, then the ISTJ doesn't have to worry about their intuition feeling confused and saying, dear me, this was not in the rule book. If you make an effort to appeal to the ISTJ's introverted sensing, they might very well make an effort to go along with your functions. Now, I don't want to list every single combination of possible types. I mean, if there's an ISTJ, ENTJ successful relationship, cool. I don't know if I could make it work, but you never know. Maybe the ISTJ would be more willing to speak up and say, you're doing it wrong. If you're with, say, an ENFP, if you respect their functions, you'll see the ISTJ start to get a lot more easygoing and more silly. I know this from experience because of my friends Danielle and Matt. The more I've hung out with them, the more I realize, you know what? I think it might be fun to be easygoing every now and then. And that's why I'm so laid back by ISTJ standards. It's because I've seen the value in developing extroverted intuition and saying, maybe this function isn't as bad as I made it out to be. Maybe it's okay to have a spontaneous hangout. Now, I'm not going to try to claim that I've developed it overly. There are still parameters I'll set. Like, no, that's a little bit too far. But I find that I don't have to set all of the parameters. I just set a few. And then I just say, okay, within this limitation, surprise me. And little things that they've done to really make my day have been the fact that they're both married now, but yet I still hang out with them fairly often. The fact that they've gotten to the point where usually when they say they're going to show up to my house, they show up right when they say that they will. They generally keep their promises. They think about what they're affirming before they affirm it, because some types have a tendency to just say whatever praises are on their mind. I mean, Danielle does that to a certain extent, but nowadays she's more like, okay, I want you to really listen to me very carefully because this is how you were before, and now you're doing all this great stuff. She's drawing on my past to try to make a point about my present and future. My friend Kara is an INFJ, my Enigma type. I may have said this over and over again, but we're like water and oil when it comes to understanding. But the fact that she has taken time out of her day when we're together to really think about what is introverted sensing, what does it mean to constantly want to keep things organized, compartmentalized, like this shelf behind me, then I say, oh, wow, Kara, you wore your hair the same way as you did when we first met. That's amazing. Or when she shows up 5 minutes early to a hangout, I'm like, Kara, you're usually late. So the fact that she's taken the time to value one of my functions makes me realize, okay, let me try thinking deeper on this. So a couple of times I'll approach her with like, hey, Kara, I had a theory about something. That makes her happy because then I'm valuing the introverted intuition that I find to be so infuriating. I say, Kara, I thought long and hard about what's going to make you happy. And I realized that I'm going to have to make a compromise here, which is something ISTJs hate. We hate compromises. But when I take time out of my day to be willing to exercise non-existent extroverted feeling, she appreciates the effort, even if I fail. So in other words, if you try your absolute best, you try as hard as you can, and you provide tangible reason to show that you worked hard, the ISTJ is going to respect that. And then in turn, you're going to be respected. And in return, you're going to have a wonderful relationship with them. I hope that's enough information for you guys. It was really hard to think of a lot of this on the spot without using too much personal information. Because believe it or not, sharing stuff about myself right away is not the easiest thing in the world, despite how easy I make it look here on these videos. So if there's anything at all that I missed, let me know in the comment section. Yes, they do exist. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless. And if you're going to grow your hair as long as mine, try to get hair thickener, because when your hair is this thin in the wintertime, that makes your ears real cold. Bye.